Welcome back to UniXTCG, and today we are here for another why or why not. I think after this one, we will clear up maybe Dofi and a touch up on Luffy. I don't know which order we're going to do that on. And then we can move on to the dual color leaders. And once we're done with all the why nots, I then will be down to, kind of maybe getting some tournament recaps happening between then and the treasure cups. And then we'll start looking at set 2, start making our set 2 content. We also got to get our Battle Spirit Saga content rolling while continuing to touch upon Dragon Ball's new set. So, we're busy over here at Universe X. That being said, I just always want to thank everybody for their constant support. We are growing exponentially over here in Universe X and want to keep growing. So with that being said, we are about to hop into the content. And if you like it, or by the time you're done listening to it, realize you like it, make sure you go down there, like the video, subscribe to the channel so it keeps growing, hit the notification button so you don't miss a beat, and comment, because all those things help these videos trend, and I very much so would love that. So let's jump into the why or why not you should play Kid for the Treasure Cups video. So, Eustass Kid, all right? The first kind of thing about the leader, right, is a lot of people kind of, I think, misconstrue what makes Eustass Kid good, because there's a lot of moving pieces to get into why this leader is a good leader. First and foremost, what lots of people don't know is that Eustass Kid is an aggressive leader, but his deck is very, very, very utility and defensive oriented. What this means is when you don't know the correct balance between pushing for advantage, like pushing for game, and pushing for a board state, what you end up getting is a vanilla leader because you're not using him to his fullest. So that's the first thing. Eustass Kid, you are able to tap 3 Dawn, trash a green card in your hand, and untap him. And this is going to allow yourself to have double attacks on a card that is always going to be there. Even if your turn is very, very not so good, or you don't want to add on anything to your board, you can always Dawn up your leader, swing twice with him for the cost of 3 Dawn and a card in your hand. So, with this being said, this does a whole lot of things. In matchups where you are afraid to build a board, like maybe against Kaido, if you don't have their health low enough and you fear the 10 drop, you can always keep the board you have and start going in with your leader with high strikes. Dawn him up by 3 or 4, swing with him, untap him, swing with him again, and you can put pressure on a deck like that. Also, this is a leader where if your opponent's at 1 life, they're almost assuredly dead. They need to have a blocker because you'll be able to Dawn this guy up to 12k and swing twice with him. So if they don't have a blocker and they have less than like 4 cards in hand, you almost know that they're going to die the following turn that you can untap. And that's a huge part about this leader. But most people only realize this towards the end of their Kid game when they don't realize that any part of the game, this leader brings all the aggression that the deck technically needs. The rest of it is just to stay alive comfortably and to make sure your opponent's board is out. So when it comes to why green, right? Green is a very, very interesting color in the sense that green has a little bit of everything. And we're going to go through that. Green has lots of board manipulation. They can tap down cards. Green is the only color that can untap its own cards right now, but that's not necessarily in this deck. Green has destruction as long as it's on rested characters. Green has a massive amount of defense, and green has utility, and on top of that, green has the most plussing out of any other deck, the most filter out of any other deck. So let's go into why green is a good, why this deck works, okay? Why this deck works. So first, you have the deck's ability to thin, filter, however you want to call it, and those come in the form of 3 cards, 2 of them putting in more work, 1 of them putting in less work. It really depends on the build, but they kind of go in descending order. Number 1 is Jewelry Bonnie. Jewelry Bonnie, you pay her for 1, you tap 1, and you're going to be able to tap her and then search your top 5 for a supernova. That is most of the deck. I assure you, if you're building it right, it's more than half of your deck. This is going to be able to search out blockers, destruction, your floodgate cards. This is searching out quite a bit. All of your power cards are coming off of Bonnie because they are all supernovas. And that is actually really, really, really strong. Now, moving from there, you got Bonnie's little brother in terms of utility, and that is Momonosuke. Momonosuke has the exact same effect. Pay him for 1, tap him for 1, search top 5 for a Land of Wano card. The thing you need to understand, though, is that in this deck, almost all of your power bombs come in the form of supernovas. All of your utility, for the most part, comes in the form of Land of Wano. The cards that tap things, extra 2k counters, lots of stuff like that. Land of Wano. So you can see where you prioritize having a Bonnie over a Momo. Last one is actually Raizo. Raizo says that when he swings, if you have 2 or more character cards tapped, you're going to be able to draw 1. And this makes the most stellar combo with these cards, because when you already have a Raizo on the field, when you open up with just 2 of these, like preferably this one actually, you can pay 1, tap, search top 5 for a supernova, then swing and draw 1, just with these 2 on the field. So it's kind of actually crazy. Now the thing is though, lots of people I feel like are using these cards a little too hastily. You do want to get the ball rolling, but these cards are a break even the turn you play them and use them. They only plus when they can survive and be used a second time. So when you can start getting multiple resolutions of these cards off, that's when they become +1s. They +2 Ju, they +3 Ju. They are literally just getting their mileage in. But when you have Raizo on the field, it goes even beyond that. You draw for turn, you tap this, you go top 5, you swing with this, and you go like +3 for the turn, including your draw for the turn. And the coolest thing about Raizo, since he's a 4K, you don't have to give your opponent a card. So if you want to don up to 5 to go neutral and get the draw, do it. If you want to get the draw while making sure your opponent has no access to other cards, do not don him up. That is the beauty of Raizo. He's a beautiful card. Now, moving past that, we're going to go into this deck's limited destruction. I say limited because it's not point and click like Kaido. You have to have a tapped creature for most of these, a tapped battle card, a tapped character. I play too many card games. But you literally have Killer, and Killer is a 3 for 3k that destroys a rested character on your opponent's side of the board that costs 3 or less. Now let me see if it says opponent's side of the board. Yep, it says opponents. And he also has a trigger ability that can be played with, and he's a 1k counter. All around good card. But if, yeah, this guy comes out, he's destroying things, and there's a good amount of targets he has. Robins, Zoros, a tapped Dofi if your opponent played it off of their Doflamingo leader. There's a lot of cards that this guy can smoke off the board. Opposing Okikus, which we'll get into later, opposing killers. There's just a lot of 3-drop value and lower that you can get with this card. Bonnies, Momos, you can swing at a Zoro for 6k, let them drop a 2k to defend it, and then just tap 3 and play this. And you got rid of the Zoro, and you got rid of a card in hand for just literally swinging with your leader for 6k. So this is actually pretty good. There's a lot of good things you can do with this. Next, you got X-Drake. A lot of people are back and forth in this card because he does cost 5, but for exchange of costing 5, he gains way more stats. He's a 6k swinger, which is great. With 1 Dawn, he's going to be pushing that magic 7 number on leader. And on top of that, he's destroying a 4 or less. Now, I've had my talks in the past about why I don't like 4 cost or less destruction, because I feel like you can do everything that, like, Killer does everything that this card does for less, for the most part. But blue is where this gets very valuable. When they play a free card off of Dofi and you want to get over the advantage, but you don't want to waste your time swinging into something they might easily protect, this guy is going to be that guy. Swing with your leader because he's free. If they block it or they use cards from hand, that's tight. Tap 5, play this, blow up the boa they just put in. Blow up the Gecko Mori they just put in. Blow up the Mihawk they just put in. And that way you're going to be able to maintain momentum, adding a body and getting rid of the free card that they did technically pay 3 Dawn for. So that's actually pretty cool. The next card I'm going to talk about, he's pseudo removal, but he is so efficient at his job, and that's Basil Hawkins. Straw Man himself. This guy is so good. With 1 Dawn on him, he's going to be able to, once per turn, untap, put himself to active mode when he swings on a character, which means that if you put yourself at a pretty good number where you know your opponent is going to have to hand out to defend their thing, or they're going to have to just lose their character, this is the best, because you're going to be able to swing that towards it, and your opponent should know, if I can't defend this card twice, there is no reason to defend it once. So he's almost a surefire kill when you do the math right, unless your opponent is misplaying and is willing to drop 3 cards in hand just to not be able to do it again when you swing again. The other cool thing is, because he's going to get that effect, if you Dawn him up 1 to 7, or you don them up twice to 8, whichever you prefer, you know, whatever the game situation calls for, and you swing at an opponent. So, like, you swing at their battle card, or their character, and he's gonna untap. Then you can swing at life. If you always intended to swing at face, you might as well swing on a character, because it's either gonna go, or they're gonna have to expend things, and then you can decide, they really wanted to keep that. Maybe I swing at it again, or you swing at face. This is a massive W for the deck. Just a very good card, and I can't explain how much better it is. I was kind of weird on it beforehand, but I literally feel like as green mirrors become more and more prevalent, this card has to be there. He also does so much work against blue as well. It's just that I didn't necessarily like him in red, because in most cases for red, they were just playing cards like out there to begin with. And I know that he even can put in work against them, but this is a very good card. Now the defensive suite. We're going to have to go through this one as fast as possible, because green might have the most defensive cards in the game. The most valid blockers in the game, plus a defensive suite to boot, even if all of it isn't even used. So let's start off here. Normal 1-cost blocker. It's there. It's beige. He's a supernova. He can be searched by Bonnie, and he can be cheated out by a card or two that we're going to go through later. Killer. He's a 2-drop. He is also a supernova, so he can be searched by Bonnie yet again. He can also be cheated out by the same cards that beige can. And on top of this, he has another ability. You put a Dawn under him, and when you have 3 or more characters, when he activates his block, you draw a card. So he's going to be able to be thrown under the bus and keep your advantage going, potentially drawing you into another out or blocker or anything you need next turn. He is an amazing card. Next, less used but coming up more and more, you got Sachi. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, Sachi and Penguin are both blockers. Why isn't Penguin on this board or in this list? It's because Penguin has 3K stat lines. This has a 4K stat line, and what that means is it can't be blown up by Robin, which is something that does come up in the red mirror or in the red matches. So this guy is a 3-cost. He can be cheated out by certain cards. He's not a supernova, so you can't search him. That's unfortunate, but he is a heart pirate. So when you play this, I don't think Beppo can actually cheat him out. Do I have a Beppo? I should have a Beppo like right around here. Maybe he's not as close as I thought. I thought I had I did have a Beppo. Beppo says, oh, 4 or less. Yeah, cool. So if for some reason you play your Beppo for this body of 4K for 4, which isn't really that great, you can then Dawn 1, go up to 5, swing with him, play a blocker. But that shouldn't come up much, but you should always be aware of your options, because you never know when that may be the difference between you winning a game and losing a game just off of forward momentum. But the point I was trying to make here is he has a 4K stat line, so you can't just rob him off the board, and he's another cheatable out card. He's definitely worth it. He's worth a spot if you want more blockers. He's probably the best blocker if you run out of all these blockers and you want to put in more. Law. You guys should know what this card does. Excellent card, but he's 5K. He's a 5-cost. He's a blocker. He has 6K stat line. No counter value, but when you play him, you can bounce any character on your board and play a 3-cost or less character. This is going to recycle so much in the deck. You can play a Bonnie, bounce a Bonnie, play her again, and then tap her again. And you can actually search 2 times that turn. Or you can put Bonnie back in your hand to play something like a thicker body like Okiku, which we'll go into later, to set up for next turn. This guy makes infinite plays, and on top of making infinite plays, since he doesn't have a cost restriction on what he can bounce, you can recycle bigger cards. I have kept blue decks at check by bouncing Drake and playing smaller bodies and replaying Drake next turn to always check whatever they put in with Dofi's effect. And that is actually really cool. This guy is amazing. Plus that, while he can be jet pistol, Shanks can't swing through him, and he's getting over a lot of the removal that hits little weenies. So this is a good blocker. Next, 7-drop Kid. 7-drop Kid is a very, very, very strong card. He is going to get ran over by purple for the most part. He's godly in the green mirror. Against blue, you have to be very careful in using them, because 7-drop Dofi answers this with a vengeance and puts you even further behind. And then you also have to be careful against red, because, you know, if you don't have the 8-drop Kid out, which we'll get to later, red will be able to bypass you with Diablo Jambe, as well as not only Diablo Jambe, but they'll be able to bypass you with cards like Luffy himself, getting into the unblockable phase. So yeah, you're looking to establish this mostly in the green mirror, but he is a good enough card to be put into the purple mirror and the red, or the purple matchup and the red matchup. It's just a little weird against blue. Now, the other thing though is, since he is in the kid deck, if you don't need him, just blow him up from hand to swing twice. That's the beauty of this deck. Dead cards are never quite dead unless, you know, you're in a situation where you just need counter power. Next, you've got the extra card defensive suite. This one isn't used at all. This is a scalpel. Basically, you're just going to go up 2k and untap. Not really used, but just understand that these cards do exist. So if somebody wants to get spicy with you, they can always just play these cards that are going to just, I don't know, refund their Dawn and make you feel like, wow, they aren't losing the capability to defend more with extra cards. You've also got Repel. Same thing. He costs 2, but he's also going to refund 1, and he's going to go up 4k. So, once again, very strong. Then, you've got this one. This is much more prevalent. Punk Gibson. This is the one that costs 2. It's going to cost 2, go up 4k, and you're going to tap something that costs 4 or less on their board. But if it gets triggered, it's going to tap anything. So that's actually a very, 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 very strong thing. Because if it gets triggered, you can put something out like a Luffy, you know what I mean? Or even if they were holding, like if Red's holding something like a Ben Beckman or a Shanks, you can tap that. Or against purple, you can tap a Queen. There's a lot of things you can tap with this card if it gets lifed, and so that's always a good plus. Lastly, but not least, you have Paradise Waterfall. Paradise Waterfall is a really cool card in conjunction with bigger blockers like Law or Kid, because he's going to be able to untap them. There are going to be situations where you are able to, they swing with like an 8, right? Or something, 8 or a 9. If it's 8, you just win this one, but if it's 9, you have to put one more card. But you can block with Kid for 7. Play Paradise Waterfall, boost him up to 9, and untap him. Not only did you block the attack, he's ready to block again. And that is the beauty of a card like that. Next, we're going to move on to utility. When it comes to utility, the utility in this, outside of limited destruction, mostly comes in the form of arresting your opponent's characters. You've got Nekamamushi, cost 2, can be searched off Momonosuke. This is where I said, like, most of Momonosuke's searches are utility. You're going to be able to tap something 3 or less. These are blockers. These are things that your opponent doesn't want you to quite get at yet, like small attackers they may dawn up later. Pivotal cards like, you know, things like Piranhas, they might be able to bounce back with Teaches if they don't have anything to bounce back on your side of the board. Things like Momonosuke's or Bonnie's they did not want to use quite yet. Things like Nami's that are putting Dawn under other like characters. So this is going to be able to get into there a whole lot of times and make sure stuff works out fine. Izo. This is a 2K. Also searchable Momonosuke because it's a Land of Wano card. Also going to be able to rest things 3 or less. So, actually 4 or less on this one. So she's actually kind of stronger. I keep saying she because of the face. Izo is stronger, but Izo is also, he's one of your 2Ks. So you need to be careful about how you use him. Next, you got Okiku. And Okiku is actually very, very, very strong. She is actually a 3-cost 5K, which is a great stat line already. And she is also going to be able to, with a Dawn in her, when she swings, she's going to rest something. She's like, in some ways less effective than Robin, but in some ways more effective than Robin. Because once you start tapping things, you can swing on them with your leader and other like characters and make sure your opponent can never keep a good board. Also, being able to hit 5 or lesses is a very strong ability because that hits Law, that hits like Queen, that hits Luth. Like you're hitting so many valuable mid-range bombs from this. So, very, very strong. Last but not least, you have Straw Sword. Straw Sword is really rough to keep in the main, but also very, very much so missed in many scenarios when you take it out of the main. And there's no such thing as a side. So, right now at least, so that sucks. But this is going to tap anything. Anything. And if it gets lifed, it kind of sucks because you get to play one Supernova with a cost of 2 or less, but that's really just Killer the blocker and Bonnie the searcher right now. So, and I guess Beige the blocker too. But yeah, you want to be able to hold this in hand and use this when your opponent is trying to keep something out of your reach to use at a later turn, catch them off guard. Next, this is another form of utility, but we're going to just be nice and sweet with it. This is one of the things that makes this deck as good as it is. 8-drop Kid. This card is borderline ignorant. When it's rested and has a Dawn underneath it, your opponent can only attack this character, which means that they need to be able to get over 8K and connect with it, which becomes very much so harder when you have a slew of cards that block for this dude. That's actually going to make it very, very, very rough to get past at a meaningful junction in the game. You have to get through normally 2 blockers, sometimes even 3 if the board's set up enough, and this guy enables everything. When this guy is on the board, outside of destruction via effect, you can sit behind a setup like this. Literally this, these 2, and 2 blockers, and you'll be seeing 3 additional cards per turn. Your opponent will not be touching your life, and you'll be blocking around them, and every turn you can swing twice with your leader, and you can swing once with a 9K. That becomes a destructive setup that most people fold under in a matter of 2 to 3 turns. You gotta understand that. Now next, we're gonna talk about the Fringe before we move on to the summary. When it comes to Fringe, there are 2 cards here that you could see in lists, and I don't really think they're the most optimal, but I also don't want people to get caught lacking. First and foremost, you have Starter Deck Law. This guy has 1 counter cost. He's going to be a 6K. He's going to cost 5. When he comes into play, you can take a Supernova with 5 or less costs and untap it. So that Basil that you thought swung twice may be able to swing a 3rd time. You know what I mean? You could swing with a Law, and then you could like blocker and then play this and untap that Law and have him ready to block again. I think this isn't really that optimal. I feel like it's a win more card. You already have to have a functional board for this to work, and that is why I personally don't like him. But hey, you never know, and sometimes it will get there because they may not kill you the turn they use it untap, but they just got an extra swing in, and then this guy's going to be coming down for even more shenanigans. The next one that's kind of Fringe, Yamato. The reason why I say this is Fringe, and it's like not to hate on anybody that's playing Yamato, but this card is a lot. It's the definition of win more for me. You play her for 5, and on that next turn, red can jet pistol it, red can Gordon or Otama and swing with Robin. Red can play a blocker if it plays them. Green can tap this and swing at it. Green can tap it with Straw Sword. Green can tap it with Okiku. But green can tap this and swing for it, or green can put up one of many, many blockers. In purple, it's going to be a lot more, it's going to be rough because purple can put up one of many blockers, but purple can also play something like a Kaido and just snap it off the board. So there's that too. Purple is going to also have the defensive cards like other decks to potentially out counter it. But then you're looking at blue, and blue can also just respond to it with Dofi, and that's another momentum swing. You paid 5, they paid 7, but they're gaining a 7K, and then you play this, and now you know you can never successfully really swing with this again. They've always got blockers for the most part, and if you swing, you get loved comboed out of it. Dofi's going to clear this up the following turn. So this is kind of weird. When it connects, boy does it feel good. But until we get Kinnaman next set, where you can play this on a earlier turn, I don't necessarily like it. Because when you get Kinnaman and you're playing this on your turn 2, that's going to be crazy because then your opponent has to essentially trade their entire turn to jet pistol this, or they're potentially having to contend getting hit with it. In the following turn, you can hit a that early in the game, a singular Nekomamushi can potentially blow out your opponent's only blocker, and this guy can swing in, like Yamato can swing in for massive damage. And even against purple, if you're playing this on turn 2, purple is going to have a lot of rougher chance getting rid of it because they're not being able to play that Kaido. So once Kinnaman comes out in set 2, this does a lot better. But for now, I think it's a win more. I think since you have to play it on turn 3 or like later, there's a lot of things your opponent can respond to that following turn. They just clear this. So that is that. So realistically, why do you play Kid in the Treasure Cups? Kid, I believe, is the most consistent deck. Between the Bonnies, the Momonosuke's, the Raizos, the ability to double swing with your leader, the cards you put in there, the blockers that help you live long enough to see all your cards, Kid is the most consistent deck in my opinion. And it does close to the same thing every game. That's what you want over the course of 9 rounds. However, why would you not want to play Kid? When it comes to the mirror, right? You need to learn it in and out. Because you should, if you play Kid, you will be exposed if you don't understand the mirror match. You will get bodied. There are no free lunches with the Kid mirror match. The only way you can see this happening is if you see like 2 7-drops and your opponent doesn't see any. You'll kind of bully the matchup. But there's no real free lunches in a Kid mirror. The other thing is that no card in this deck really functions alone. Kid manages to make these overwhelming advantageous spaces by being a fully built board. Once you ruin a Kid player's momentum and they're playing one character at a time and not even being able to sustain more than 2 at a time, it's not a healthy game for the Kid player. They will fold hard with a secluded board. The board needs to become strong, which means as a Kid player, you need to understand the flow of momentum versus each deck, what you should be wary about, which cards you should not play out because of which removal, and when it's safe to do so. The third point is it's a matter of practice. A Kid player will need, I honestly feel like in some cases, more practice than some of the other colors, because knowing when to switch from a defensive stance to an aggressive stance will win you more games than almost any other thing you could do with your deck. There are just certain times where you have to realize that being defensive isn't going to work, but the defense that you do have is enough to keep you alive while your leader is blowing your opponent's back out, just with its repeated double swings that are huge. So that's that. But back to the pros of this, yes, you have a Swiss Army knife deck. You tap things down. You blow up things that have already swung or that you've rested. You get blockers out of the way via resting things. You have a floodgate for attacks. You have blockers beyond the imagination. Your leader will put out as much offense as you need it to, and you just need to build up your castle and then shoot cannons off the battlements. That's literally what's going on here. So I do think that Kid is one of the better decks in the format, if not close to the best, if not the best. Like of course, Kaido's going to out high roll anything, but I think Kid over here is doing quite a lot. So that is my why or why not you should play Kid for the Treasure Cups. I hope you guys liked it. Like I said, if you like the content, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and we will be doing even more One Piece content in the future, as well as Dragon Ball Super, as well as Battle Spirits. So just stay tuned for your card gaming needs, and I will see you next time.